Good morning, gamers. I'm back with a new PoE build for 3.26 Mercenaries League. This is Smite on a champion with a unique sword called the Saviour. This is a very cool sword from Uber Cyrus, and I have not even equipped this item since Metamorph League when it was introduced, and then it got pushed onto the Uber table, so of course I never saw it ever, but I figured now would be a good time to hop back in and, just mess around with it. There's a lot of cool attack skills you can play with this. I was messing around with Lancing Steel for a bit, which was pretty fun, but ultimately not tanky enough. And then I settled on just going full meta with Smite, Doriani, Prototype, Merc, the whole package. What this does is it gives you a free zero-cost skill called Reflection. And what that does is it spawns 2 Mirage clones of yourself when you critically strike with an attack. They deal 50% less damage, and they last for 10 seconds by default. So essentially this will double your damage in an ideal scenario. For all damage scaling purposes, these are treated as U. So if you get more damage, then your Mirages will get more damage. Let's start off with the gear here. In the main hand, we have a Paradoxica with extra fizz and attack speed. You can also go for Elemental Pen for the prefix, and it's pretty comparable, but I think it's a little bit more expensive. In here, we just got a Mark on Hit setup with Life Tap, Mark on Hit, and Assassin's Mark. And in the offhand, we got the Saviour itself. This Corrupt is not needed. I just happened to find this on the market for about 20 divines, I think. Just make sure you don't buy any with Resolute Technique because those are scams. Your entire build won't work. The reason we put the Saviour in the offhand here is the Saviors, to my knowledge, they attack with the main hand weapon only. So you want to have them use the Paradoxica with the double damage to actually attack. I don't know if that's still true, but that was the case when this item was introduced. And also there's a passive mastery on the tree that gives you +1 offhand base crit, so that helps just sustain your Mirage clones better when it's in the offhand. And for the sword link, we just have automation linked to Molten Shell with more duration, which does impact the duration of the Mirage warriors. For the helmet, we just got a big life roll, big suppress roll, and res, crafted on AoE gems, so we could put our auras in here. And for the implicits, just a little bit of fizz mitigation assistance as well as mana cost reduction. And we're doing just Enlighten, Flesh and Stone, Determination, and Grace. We are stacking as much armor and evasion as possible, so getting these to +1 is very beneficial. Chest piece is just a huge evasion armor hybrid, rolled with dense fossils until I hit. It's a pretty basic craft, but it could be a lot better if you did like a fractured suppressed chest to start out with, or a fractured chaos res, but I think those bases, especially on a conquest, would be like 20 or 25 divs, so I definitely did not opt to do that. This was probably a 1 divine base, pre-6 linked, which was kind of surprising, but crafted suppress is good enough. And then for implicits, just got some more crit multi and some physical mitigation. This is where we put our 6 link, of course. We have Smite, linked to volatility, ally damage with attacks, multi-strike, awakened added lightning, and increased crit damage. Onto the boots. These were a 1 divine fractured base, and I just spammed the movement speed harvest bench craft until I hit a big life roll, and I landed on lightning res, crafted on the rest of the res. And then we went for Brittle Ground just to increase our crit chance sometimes on bosses. And then rounding it out with the Avoid Ailments to get us to Ailment Avoidance cap. In here, we just got Life Tap with Corrupting Fever. This is to proc Adrenaline. So as you see, our Corrupting Fever costs little above half of our life, so we have to cast it twice. And then we'll use our Ascendancy to proc Adrenaline and get a very nice buff for about 25 seconds. You can pre-buff on bosses more easily with it. And yeah, just faster attacks, whirling blades. Could also use leap slam, but I've done enough leap slamming for one league, so I wanted to whirl around. Gloves are the Celestial Brace. This is easily the most expensive piece of gear in the build, besides the weapon, of course. I think I got these for about 24 divines. Luckily, they were already corrupted, so somebody probably just wanted to get rid of them. This gets us to 40 Fortify stacks, which is absolutely crazy, as well as giving us 40% attack speed. And in the gloves, we have Frostblink, Arrogance linked to Precision, and then Blood Rage. For the jewelry, we got an amulet here that I've been using pretty much all league. Gives us like 100 intelligence, a little bit of dex, a little bit of strength, huge life roll, huge crit multi roll, helps our mana, and then rounding it out with the anoint for crystal skin, +1 max res, and the rest of our ailment avoidance chance. This ring, just to fill out our resistances and give us a little bit of life. And again, this ring I've been using pretty much on every build I can. It's a lot of chaos res, a lot of life, good fire res roll, and some mana. And Perseverance is just a champion classic. They go hand in hand with the armor and evasion nature of the build. Just gives us about 180 to 200% increased damage depending on our buffs. Rounds out our cold res nicely, gives us some life, gives us permanent onslaught. You know, this thing is incredible value. For the flask setup here, we just got a life flask with corrupting blood, some tincture action. This thing is insane, gives us like 40% more damage or so. And then just quicksilver, quartz, and diamond. I just like the phasing quality of life from this. A case can be made to use Smite of Divine Judgment, and as you can see, I was using this a lot actually. The only downside is it's not Fall Smite, so you can't get that nice buff with extra targets and all that good stuff. I'm sure it would feel a lot better otherwise, but since the Mirage Warriors can't strike multiple targets anyways, the coverage from this is really not better than just you hitting yourself. So functionally, Smite is the same for Mirage Warriors, except a little bit worse because of the damage effectiveness being a lot higher with the regular Smite. So that's why I've opted to use this for now. We are sitting at a nice 37k, 41k, respectively, armor and evasion. A little bit more when I have flasks up during mapping, so it feels very comfortable having, you know, a lot of this evade chance, a lot of armor. We got 77 max res, we got spell suppress cap, ailment avoidance. The only thing I'm not currently immune to is like stuns and curses, but I could easily slime in a mage blood here and just do like the standard mage blood setup with the flasks, and it would feel super cozy. Let's go on to the Mercenary's gear. It's a standard Doriani abuser. So we have, right now we have negative 200 lightning res, very broken. Of course, using Doriani's prototype to make enemy res negative 200. We're using just a minus 70 here, minus 46, and then a big one on the amulet. It's kind of unfortunate about the amulet though, because I would like to be using Perkle's Toe. However, I don't have the funds necessary to get crazy high reflected rings. So I did some quick maths, and this is way more damage than having lucky damage. So I'll take this for now. Boots, we just got Endurance Ralakesh. Helps them stay alive, immune to corrupted blood, which is quite dangerous for the mercs since they don't have any jewel sockets. I literally have not had this guy die in anything, and I was putting him through some really cringe maps like Abomination with a bunch of minus res and all that. So Immortal Flesh for minus 25 again, a little bit of regen, and then the rest of the rares are just some res, and a Wrath aura effect on the staff here because they do have Wrath. It's pretty much the only reason I'm using this version of the Merc. You could use really any of them. All right, on to the passive tree. We are, of course, a champion, taking Worthy Foe for the taunt, and then subsequently they take more damage, and they also can't evade. So despite having 96% chance to hit, as long as we hit them once, then permanently we will be able to hit them, even if they're evasive. So don't have to really worry too much about accuracy, which is very nice. And taking this for the adrenaline sometimes, or if you want to proc it yourself with Corrupting Fever, and then some Intimidate if we're lucky enough to hit the first attack. I would consider dropping this to get Inspirational. It would be almost comparable in terms of defenses, but not in terms of damage, assuming I have Intimidate up and Adrenaline up. And it wouldn't be a champion without Fortitude and Unstoppable Hero. This just gives you your max fortification at all times, also giving nearby allies your max fort. So my Merc has, 40 damage reduction inherently, which probably is one of the main reasons he's not died yet. And then Unstoppable Hero, which is quite nice with 40 fortification, big attack speed, big armored evasion. It does everything. This Lethal Pride here giving us 4 max fortify stacks on Golem's Blood, Dervish, Art of the Gladiator, and Assured Strike. Pathing over here to the Graceful Assault, because we always have Onslaught. This is just good armor and evasion. Getting a little bit of aura effect, +1 max res. Path into the Life, taking the 15% increased mastery, some suppress, the bleed chance, bleed crit wheel, and over here we have a very nice Light of Meaning with Chaos Res. This gives us about 68 Chaos Res, which is phenomenal. I originally had it here, but I needed to do the Lethal Pride memes, so I had to move it. And getting some more suppress here just to round us out. More life, a little bit of mana reservation, and of course the sword wheel, we got increased crit chance mastery there. And for the cluster here, we got feed, fuel, and martial prowess, just for some leech and attack speed and accuracy, all that good stuff. We're stealing the Overwhelm Ascendancy node from Slayer, which is just the base crit becomes 8. Not super crazy of an increase for the Paradoxica, but the Saviour has a base crit of 5.5, so it does help a little bit with that. As you can see here, I'm at 33 base crit without this, and then in 46. That's before any flask buffs or Assassin's Mark, all that good stuff. So it helps a lot. However, I would definitely like to use the Slayer Overleech, because that would be way more damage and attack speed, especially with Feed the Fury. And back to the middle here, we have the attack mastery for additional strikes. This, again, does not work for the Mirage clones, but this is purely for quality of life for our own mapping. And getting +1 offhand crit chance, and Runegraft of the Warp for buffs and debuffs. One of the best Runegrafts in the game, in my opinion. Pathing over here, getting the 1 rage on hit. It does enough. I get about 5 to 10 rage on a boss, depending on how fast it dies. So it's definitely worth 1 click. Going to get this sword mastery for frenzies on hit, and then the 6 fortify stacks from here, a little bit of life, and another cluster. We have Feed the Fury, Hit and Run, Martial Prowess on this one. Of course, only taking the first 2 nodes for Hit and Run and Feed the Fury. And in here we have a very juicy Watcher's Eye with PDR, attack damage, and a little bit of Convert to Lightning. And of course the Ancestral Vision, giving us the Ailment Avoid chance based on our spell suppress. That is the build. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.